Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Hey guys, sorry about that. Sorry that we are a little bit late. I know I see people in the chat. We're getting a little anxious. I was having some resolution issues with the streaming aspect. So even though I was connected to the internet, it was showing me some weirdness. But anyhow, we're good now, it looks like. So I have with me the wonderful, the awesome, the fantastic Mr. Nate the lawyer. How are you, Nate?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You talked me up now.
I know.
I feel like I gotta live up to this expectations now. So
of course, always. I always need to give lots of compliments and stuff to my guests. We also will have Kurt on civil law will be joining us. And today we will have, for the first time ever, boss attorney Bri. She's another lawyer on YouTube. She's got a I think a relatively new channel. So I'm really looking forward to meeting her, chatting with her, and kind of talking about some of this stuff. I think she said that she does a lot of like corporate law kind of stuff, and maybe some IP kind of stuff too. It sounds like. So that'll be good to get to know her a bit.
oh, yeah.
And otherwise, hey, Photo Chad. Nice to see you in the chat. So Nate, how you been doing?
I've been doing okay. It's funny because I'm like, should I share this meme with everyone? Should I not? So I'm like, you know what? Let's share the Rittenhouse meme. Let's start this thing off with some fire right now. All right, guys. This meme I tweeted out. Don't hate me because I am I'm a bad man. I'm going to hell for this. But we're going to look at this Kyle Rittenhouse meme. It's bad. It's bad. I'm a bad man. Here we go.
I feel it though.
That's horrible. That's how I feel when I go to the gas pump. I feel like that's the way it is. $7 gas is like, oh my god. I'm a crier too. So yeah.
I feel it in my heart. I really feel that one in my heart. I have to say. So it's like I'm laughing not because it's Kyle Rittenhouse necessarily, but it's just because it's just so painful, right? It was such a painful moment in real time. And then in this context, it's also so painful because of like the truth of it. It's just, oh man.
Oh my god.
Man. So I know I feel so terrible for laughing at it too. It's just so funny.
Really yeah, that's brutal comedy right there.
I know.
Oh my god.
I know. Yeah, we're terrible people. We're going to hell.
We're going to hell. So what is on the docket today? We have a lot of crazy cases. It seems like.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot. There's of course Jussie Smollett. We thought it was over. Did you think it was done? I thought it was done. We all thought it was done. We thought he was gone for 5 months, and now no, he's not.
There are a couple of things like for the appeal, like my honest opinion is, even if he doesn't get any more time other than the 6 days, I think that's good enough for a false police report. He spent a week in prison or in jail. If someone, I don't think that's I think that's enough jail time for that crime. You know what I mean? Level 4 felony, no violent criminal history. Okay, he's spent a week in jail. So, but people want to spend like the whole 5 months. They want him to spend the whole 5 months in prison. So I don't know. I don't know.
You know who wants him to spend the whole 5 months there is this guy right here.
Kurt.
Years.
Mr.
Years.
Oh, your volume. Kurt, can you turn your volume down a little bit? You're popping a little bit.
Yeah. Well, welcome to another episode of StreamYards and You, the microphone wars.
Who's winning?
I unsubbed from StreamYards for their premium service. They sent me an email saying why. I sent back an email. I let them know. Your audio method sucks.
Was it a dissertation?
It might have had the words unbreaded a couple times. It's possible. No,
unbreaded.
I mean, yeah, I think I have to respectfully and quite poignantly and dramatically disagree with my good friend Nate the lawyer on this one, because every crime is, of course, measured by its own terms, as it should, as it must be, right? Justice is and must be a individualized exercise, because not all crimes are created the same. And so when you look at this particular crime, according to guidelines, probation is to be recommended. I have no problem with this recommendation. Now let's look at the particulars of this particular crime. For my mind, the fact that he tried to start a race war is kind of important, in my humble opinion. This is not, in my humble opinion, your average lying to the police, obstruction, wasting their time stuff. This, to my mind, I'll go once. I think it is a crime of violence to some degree, because there was a fake hate crime with violence, and the violence might have been committed against him, but so what? And also, I think you can go to an attempted crime of violence, because again, race war. So, trying to turn the entire city and country apart. So in my humble opinion, a weekend penalty does not justice in this particular case make. I was like trying to do the calculations. I'm like, these are separate crimes, which means consecutive. What's 3 times 5 again? Oh yeah, but I was not getting anywhere close to anything 15. Like that. So yeah.
I'm with you on this being
split the difference on this 3-judge panel.
Yeah, I'm with you on this being kind of a different kind of case, right? Because of the fact that this is not just somebody who is making a false report, to the police, which should be punished, regardless of who it is. But this was somebody that was purposely doing it in order to benefit himself and to start, something nationwide. And I think that it's the level of attention that he intended to get and then, purposely did get for it. I think is one of those things that really should be a factor in this. That's not your average situation.
I mean, even if he didn't intentionally, bare minimally, he knowingly. He knows the state of the world, particularly at that time, about what is going on in race relations as America, which, as we might remember at that particular moment in time, felt particularly fraught and particularly on edge at that particular moment in time. He knows that. He's not a complete idiot. He's aware of all those things. So he does what he does in knowledge of that. So the fact that he has that knowledge is a sufficient mens rea to my mind. Whether or not he intentionally exploited it, which I think you can get there too. It's like he did it at that time for that purpose of bringing attention to himself. I'm still convinced that the letter itself, the letter that started this whole rodeo, was probably fake.
It was him. Yeah, of course.
Probably was him.
Yeah.
And
it looks like an arts and crafts.
And I'd like to just remind
project.
everyone at this point that mail fraud is in fact a federal
felony
that
more time.
I believe can get you up to 25 years.
Yeah, here we go.
So I just want to say that, make me U.S. attorney and we'll make America great again.
Well, hold on. Only reason why you got to be careful with the mail fraud, because Lori Loughlin and those people were charged with mail fraud, and they could have got 25 years. They only got 2 weeks, right? And theirs was just as egregious, and they were actual victims with theirs, right? People who couldn't get into the school because they took places on the rowing team and that type of thing. So
you're telling me that the feds
I don't know if I would give them.
The feds are also weak.
I don't know. I
feds are weak. Let's go commit some mail fraud.
I don't think giving people jailed. I think jail time is appropriate. And to be honest with you, in the Jussie Smollett case,
Mhm.
I thought jail time was appropriate. Yeah, I do think, and I think the judge can easily get there. But if someone says, he spent 6 days and we're not going to, and that's going to be it, I'm okay with that, right? He still got the probation and all that stuff. But I don't think, I think a year or 2 years or something like that. I think that's just too much. Just as somebody who's
going to be a Lifetime movie. My 6 Days in the Hole, the Jussie Smollett story.
Oh, Legalbytes. Are you saving the super chats on the side now? Are you starring them?
I am. Oh,
if you hover over them and you click them, you can star them, and they'll.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I totally
so you don't miss them.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, I'm doing that right now because we've got a few that we've got to go over, and then I can go. Oh, and then I can go over to starred. Oh, this is amazing. Okay, so 2012, Jameson says crazy California case of a woman faking her own kidnapping.
That's also a lot of fun.
That is also crazy.
That's a Gone Girl.
Also crazy. I still need to dig a little bit deeper into that one. But that one, just from the basic facts of it, the fact that her ex-boyfriend was involved in this whole thing, and then she blamed 2 Latino women for kidnapping her. No, that wasn't.
Latino was the new
that was
black?
A fabrication. What's that?
Latino was the new black.
I guess. I guess so.
She pulled the Smollett, huh? She pulled the Smollett. She said 2 Latino women.
It's like a blend. It's like a blend of Latino of Jussie Smollett.
I was thinking Susan Smith actually when I was making my comment. I was going way back.
Was that the bird watching lady in Central Park?
Susan Smith was the woman who drowned her kids in South Carolina.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yes.
No, I was thinking of the lady who falsely called the cops on a black man who was bird watching in Central Park.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's Barnes. Barnes had that case. I forget her name though. Amy Cooper.
Amy Cooper. It's like a blend between Amy Cooper and Jussie Smollett. But it's got a California flavor because instead of two black people, it's two Latino people. But
when I fake a crime, it's going to be 2 Swedish people, very specifically Swedish. Although they might have been Nordic. I don't know. It's hard to tell. They all look the same to me.
So anyhow, but the fact that her ex-boyfriend is involved and she's married and I think has kids, like there was something about it that to me, after getting initiated on the basic facts, was like, this feels like someone who ran away with her ex-boyfriend for the weekend and then kind of lied about it, didn't realize it started to snowball and then got worse and worse and then just lied upon lied upon lied. And then now she's got potential criminal charges against her.
It sounds like Gone Girl. Have you guys watched the movie Gone Girl?
I haven't, but I
no, it's
feel
the same
like
thing. Fake kidnapping. She was married, blah, 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 was found out, that type of thing.
Oh, geez. Yeah, but I've heard it's a really good movie. And I think it's based off of a book, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh. Crazy case. 2012 Jameson also said, Nate, is it okay to be a naked NFL player trying to tackle a cop? As a cop and attorney, thoughts? Have you guys seen that footage?
No.
Down in Florida?
I'm assuming that's CT though, because I've seen a lot of those videos of former NFL players. If you can just you go, a lot of them just have CT, and you'll see like there was one guy who tried to run through a plate glass window, who was a former NFL.
Gosh.
So yeah, they're all messed up, man, when they come out.
CT is in like brain damage?
Yeah, so they essentially, when you in the NFL, the contact, since the contact, it's worse. It's actually worse than boxing, they say, because every play there's physical contact and head trauma. So they said it's the equivalent of putting on a raincoat and a bicycle helmet and running into your garage door, 60 times a day or a game. And that brain damage accumulates and it's essentially starving the brain of oxygen. So after you finish playing, all that brain damage just accumulates. When you get older, it gets worse and so forth and so forth. So
yeah. There's a lot of crazy things. There's I knew a guy actually who went to my high school who was my year. He was a really nice guy. He played in the NFL for a few years. Died a few years ago randomly of an aneurysm. And I assume that it has something to do with having played, for those years in the NFL, because otherwise he was like peak health. Like there was no reason why he should. I mean, it happens to younger people too at times. I've had other friends have like pulmonary embolisms and stuff like that, and like in college, which is crazy. But yeah.
But just to answer this, something like this may not even be criminal if we can tell that he has mental disease or defect. That we're not talking about criminal charges here. We may be talking about
intent, right?
Yeah. So
although I think that one of the biggest concerns in that situation was the fact that it was like right next to, I think, an elementary school or preschool or something. It was like right in the parking lot too.
Yeah. But if you have here it's called mental disease or defect. But if you have something like that is going to, they're going to not guilty by those reasons, and then you go to a hospital and get treatment. So
yeah, no, that would make sense. Abe Eckstein says, would you support a law if you hoax a crime, you serve as if you committed said crime?
I like that. To be honest with you, I actually like that.
I think I might want to maybe add a little bit of an extra standard of proof or something just to make sure. I don't know. It's I'm thinking off the top of my head, but
as a minimum,
it's not a terrible idea.
We can use it as a guideline consideration for the underlying crime. So if we don't change the underlying crime in terms of its own terms, but it would be at least a valid guideline consideration, right? As I'm considering, or as a judge is considering various aggravating and mitigating factors, one of the factors that could be weighed would be, what was the crime that was trying to be hoaxed, and what would that kind of penalty, and what were you trying to do? Especially if you're trying to put someone else in jail. I have some real thoughts when it comes to false accusations that implicate particular people, because you're trying to take away their liberty, and I feel like there should be some really harsh penalties for those people.
Yeah. Well, although I will say though that, thinking about it from the perspective of somebody that has a very legitimate claim, I would be concerned about that having a potential chilling effect on those people coming forward and making claims, because there could be a concern of like, if I don't prove this, there's a chance that I could be charged for making this claim.
Well, I think a couple things. I think the intuition might go the other way, and I'm not sure which of us is right, but I think it might go the other way in some respects, because I think the fact that the people who make false accusations are not being punished leads to the perception that those accusations are false generally. Like, so if we're thinking about sexual assault claims, like for example in particular, the fact that false accusations are not prosecuted means there's less deterrence to make false accusations, which would increase the probability of false accusations, which means that from like 0.0, if you're looking at just there's an allegation, it would be more likely than otherwise that it's false, right? Because there's more falsity in the entire pool, right, of all possible accusations. So the probability this is false is influenced by the other people in the pool. So I think it might be true, and I don't know, but I think it might be true that if false accusations were more harshly punished, there would be fewer of them, and the perception that any given accusation is false would decrease. So I think in some ways it might be beneficial rather than harmful, but I'm not sure which way it actually goes in reality.
Well, your analysis deals with one side of the seesaw in terms of the numbers now that we know, because we have a history of numbers of false accusations, things of that nature. And right now it's at like 95%, right? 95% are actual and like 5% are false. So even
2 to 8 is the number I've heard. So 5% is the middle ground, works for me.
Yeah. All right. 2 to 8, 5%. So if you're now punishing those 5%, how does that affect those who real? Well, okay, I'm not going to report because, and now you're going to have this whole, thing put up just because of 5%. It almost seems like overkill for a problem that really, you have to, I think you kind of have to weigh both sides to really come up with the thing. And I think society now has come up with, well, you know what, this 5% we'll deal with, because we'll rather not sacrifice the 5% of the real victims for the 5% of the so-called fake victims.
Yeah.
I'm just balancing it out as a public policy piece.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, and especially it depends on, how far would we be willing to expand this to? What kind of crimes, right? What kind of hoaxes? Because I mean, we could talk about false accusations of assault of an intimate nature, we could say. Those are particularly tricky already as it is,
Mhm.
and you can imagine that there are I think it is true that there are probably many more women and maybe men also that don't come forward when they are victims of an assault of that nature, and because of fears of all kinds of retaliation, retribution. And then on top of that, there's also the possibility then, if we were to have something like this added on to it, that they would have to possibly face their own jail time just for coming and naming their accuser. I don't know that I would appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I understand. It's a complicated issue, and it's tough, especially when we're talking about it off the cuff, because there's a lot of studies and stuff that goes into it.
Yeah.
But I agree with Curry. I think both your points are extremely valid. It's just interesting because it's having this conversation. I don't think there's really, you have to accept some negative piece to it, right? I don't think there's any silver bullet. So I'm thinking society now accepts the fact that we're going to have false accusations, but what do you do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And Britt Cormier says, so if you hoax a murder, don't ask how. You can get the death penalty. That seems a bit extreme. Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Agreed, yeah.
And that would definitely be very, very extreme. For sure. Malik McDowell apparently is a player, according to 2012 Jameson. That sounds about correct from the videos that I saw earlier. Did you guys see the video of him tackling a cop in Florida? I mean, that was like, I mean, just you've got like, and the cop himself, he's not small. He's maybe around 6 foot or something like that. But like, he's got a little bit extra on him, but he's not exactly a weakling, at least the way that it looks. And just seeing him get decked by this big NFL player who's also naked on top.
Nice.
He's just completely naked. It's kind of humorous until you learn that he actually got injured in the process. But yeah. Anyhow, Dragon's Treasure, using coupon code Legalbytes to get some nice tea will also help me escape this worthless hell known as Cook County. Get me out.
Do I need to come up there? Do I need to come up there and just put you in my car like a refugee or something? Because I can drive up there. It's a bit of a drive from Austin, but for you, my friend, I will come up there and I will rescue you. I'll be part of the caravan to get you across the lines, if that helps.
The caravan for the Cook County refugees.
That's right.
And I do have to note that if you do use Legalbytes as a coupon code at checkout at thedragonstreasure.com, I do get a kickback and you get 10% off. And obviously you get to support a small tea business that is really, really good. The product is very, very good.
Awesome.
Yeah. Abe Eckstein says the burden of proof, I guess, talking about this potential change of laws with hoaxes. The burden of proof would be beyond a reasonable doubt, like Jussie kind of proof.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, for all criminal case would necessarily be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's that.
Yeah, for sure. So, alrighty. As far as what do you guys think is going to happen next as far as the appeal is concerned? Because people are asking, I know you guys talked about this yesterday on Nate's channel, just as kind of like a quick response to it. But have you guys thought further on this?
Well, I got a video coming out later today about this. But one thing though is that the Jussie's defense team, and this is me playing prosecutor now. Jussie's defense team is trying to kind of have it both ways. And what I mean by that is now they're coming and saying for the appeal, we had a deal. That deal was 2 days community service, $10,000 fine. We had a deal. And the prosecutor made that deal. And we don't care if the prosecutor was authorizing anything. We had a deal. We did our part of the deal. And the prosecutor should be held to that deal, right? That's what they're saying. That's what they said last night. That's what they said in the last day of court. But I actually went back and looked it up to see if they've always been saying. So right after Jussie did the deal with the prosecutor initially, I have the clip even ready. This is what the defense team said about whether they had a deal with the prosecutor's office or not, and whether he committed 2 days community service based on that deal, and whether he forfeited his bond based on the deal. So we're going to hear his defense counsel, the same one who was in court, all these people, right? The same defense counsel. She's going to tell us whether Jussie Smollett had an agreement with the prosecutor to do all this. Exhibit A. Here we go.
All right.
StreamYards. Oh,
come on, StreamYard. it was like perfectly set up, and then like,
StreamYard
let us down again.
Oh, there it is.
Here we go. All right. So now we're expecting her to say, yes, of course, we had a deal, right? And this is let's see what she says.
No, the discussions were strictly with the prosecutors who were actually handling the case.
Now, the prosecutor's office says that the charges were dropped in exchange for your client's agreement to forfeit $10,000 that he had paid in a bond and to do community service. Is that correct?
So now the question has been asked. So now we're going to know, is this correct? What did you have a deal? And was it, this quid, you do this, I do this. Let's hear what she says.
Those conditions on his dismissal of charges?
There were no conditions, and obviously there was no plea. There was no agreement in place. They did want him to forfeit the bond, and that's something that we discussed with him, and he initially struggled with because he didn't want the perception to be that he had done anything wrong. But at the end of the day, forfeiting $10,000 versus putting your life on hold for a year was a small cost to pay.
But to be clear, because the prosecutors are now trying to say, well, there were conditions. This wasn't a get out of jail free card. You're saying he chose to forfeit that bond essentially voluntarily.
Yeah, they had asked if he would do that, and we advised him that he should do that because it was going to cost him almost, multiples of that number to go to trial.
What about the community service aspect of it?
The community service is something we initially raised ourselves at the initial bond hearing, saying this is somebody who's volunteered hundreds of hours, thousands of hours since he was a teenager to all sorts of organizations. It's something he's always done. So in our discussions with the prosecution, we told them about his volunteer service. We did show them a few letters of his ongoing community service.
But was this a condition of the charges being released? He's got to do this community service.
He had to do nothing. There was no obligations, no conditions. These are things that he chose to do because that's his character. And again, you can find out from multiple sources that this is what he's done for years and years and years with multiple organizations.
Let's talk about some of the facts.
I'm a damn good lawyer. I am a damn good lawyer. To pull that up right there to prove, now they're saying that he had a deal, but I've just proved to you that they did have a deal. She said they didn't, they never had a deal. So everybody out there talking about, hey, there was a deal, we had a deal. His lawyers are saying they never had a deal. If you guys get in trouble, you better call Nate the lawyer, because Nate the lawyer goes, that's my exhibit 1. She's saying that we never had a deal.
Oh,
no
man.
conditions,
She's
no agreement.
I have this side of my mouth and I have that side of my mouth, and I'm going to talk out of them both.
But that's what lawyers do, though. I'm inventing new sides of my mouth to talk out of all the time. That's part of my job.
I mean, it's there is such a thing as alternative arguments, but I think this is taking it a little bit too far.
How can you not take that to the appeals court? His own lawyers are saying this on TV. They've been saying this for 6 months.
They've
been saying this for 6 months.
Is that lawyer still on the legal team? I don't remember seeing her.
Yes,
at the sentencing hearing.
She was. Remember, she's the one that gave the hour and a half speech with the sentencing hearing. Remember the hour and a half speech, that the one where we were all so bored. We were like, oh my god, that was her.
Oh, she looks a little different in this one. Like maybe she's I don't know. Hair and makeup or something looked better at the sentencing hearing. I don't, no disrespect to her in this clip, but she just, I didn't recognize
no
her.
shade, but she looks like trash.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
So now Kurt, because Kurt was the one saying this is just like Cosby. This is just like Cosby.
I didn't say that.
Oh yeah, I thought you were saying. Oh no, I think it was Natalie. Maybe it's Natalie. So, but I'm asking you, that I think deals a hell of a blow to their argument.
I think so.
And for anybody that is kind of new to this, question, Bill Cosby, he was sentenced to jail for assaulting women, many women in a very intimate way. And then the defense team came back and ended up successfully arguing that he had been offered a a deal by the prosecutor, the previous prosecutor who was replaced by the one who ended up charging him. He had been previously offered and accepted a deal that saying that they were not going to prosecute him if he decided to testify in the civil matter, because I guess they weren't planning on charging him or whatever. And then that prosecutor was replaced by a new one who said, nope, we're charging, we're going. And so he successfully argued that he was able to rely on that previous promise, and so was able to get out of jail a little bit early. So yeah. So, but this is a little bit different. But before we get into that, let me first introduce our new guest, Boss Attorney Bri.
Hi.
Hey,
Ooh,
welcome.
New friend appears.
Yes, we have a new friend.
Yes, thank you for having me today. I'm sorry I was a little late.
Oh, that's okay. I know you said that you had a hearing, right?
Yes, I had a hearing and the judge was not helping me today. So we got all through it, but we got a restraining order dropped. So that's good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know who Boss Attorney Bri is. This is new information. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your channel, what you do, all the good stuff.
Yes, I am new to YouTubing. I am covering celebrity cases as well. So trademark law, copyright law, breach of contract, mostly on the business side for celebrities. And I also own my own practice where I practice the same type of law in addition to family law as well. So I'm a new YouTuber. And I watch you guys all the time, but so I'm so happy to be with you guys.
Family law definitely is a domain I will not even begin to claim anything resembling competence in. So any family law issues, you are more than welcome to. You can be the family law expert of the Lawtubes as far as I'm concerned. If you want to talk trademark or copyright law to me, though, let me know. We can talk some copyright trademark law.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, it's like
sometimes there are cases that there's sometimes cases people don't know about, but I just want to talk about them because they're just so interesting to me. And so that's the majority of my practice is trademark law.
Excellent.
Nice. So we were just talking about the Jussie Smollett situation. I know you said that you don't really do as much like criminal law kind of stuff, but we were just covering this because it has held all of our attention for so long now. And so anyhow, so the fact that so what we were just talking about was the comparison between his situation and the Bill Cosby situation.
Yes.
So anyhow, Nate, I interrupted you. What were you going to say about that?
Yeah, the Jussie Smollett case turns on, I think, a different question. I think Kurt said it so eloquently last night on his stream, but it turns on a different question. The Jussie Smollett case turns on the authority of the prosecutor to make the decision to dispose of the case. When the prosecutor in the Jussie Smollett case when the prosecutor recused herself, she essentially recused her whole office because the office, all the other ADAs under her only had authority through the prosecutor. So she delegates authority to them and they prosecute cases. That's the way it works in Illinois. But so when she accuses herself, then a special prosecutor has to be appointed to regain that authority to prosecute cases on the state's behalf. So what happens in this case is that the state prosecutor recused herself and then appointed her subordinate as an acting state's attorney. And that's a fictitious office. There's no such thing as an acting state's attorney. There's absolutely no this. So they had absolutely no authority to come to any agreement with Jussie Smollett. So what did they do? They came to an agreement with Jussie Smollett, which now his attorneys at the time said they didn't come to any agreement, right? His attorneys said there was no agreement. They're saying they came to an agreement. So the legal issue that came up in this case was, well, if the state's attorney didn't have any authority to come to that agreement, is the agreement still valid? Does the agreement hold? Now, Jussie Smollett and his attorneys are saying, well, yeah, the agreement is still hold. Number one, we didn't know that this is going on. And the fact of the matter is that there's an apparent authority here. They went to court. They said, I'm the state. I represent the state. And they cut us a deal and we served our part of the deal. So it's on them, not on me. Mm-hmm. But there's some case law that we looked up yesterday. I was showing Kurt, in which the same exact thing happened in the past. And the court has reasoned that whole prosecution is void on its face. You don't even have to go to court and ask the court to void it. It's void on its face because the only way the state allows you to prosecute citizens is by having that authority out of the statute. So in one instance, the court is saying, well, that was void, and that's what allowed the second prosecution of Jussie Smollett to occur. because there was no statutory authority for the first prosecution. So we're going into appeals with those two arguments. Did Kim Foxx's office have the authority to prosecute? If that answer is yes, then Jussie's second conviction is probably likely going to be overturned. If it's no, then his second conviction is likely going to be upheld.
But then there's also the additional question that we kind of just went over with that video clip, is whether or not his attorneys actually believed that that was a valid offer that they could rely on. Because it sounds like they didn't have, I mean, they're walking around saying that they didn't have an agreement. It sounds like they didn't take that as a real offer, right? So that's another potential argument for the state to say, no, we don't have an issue here.
Yeah, when you have the attorneys, so the clip you just came in, boss attorney, we just watched the clip of Jussie's attorney right after they dismissed the charges. They said there was absolutely no deal. We had no deal. They said, well, what about the $10,000? He said he gave it up voluntarily. What about the two days of community service? He said he did that on his own. Right, there was no deal, no conditions. They just dismissed the case free of charge. So there was no conditions on the deal. So his attorneys said that then. 3 years later, now they're in court saying, guess what? We had a deal, and we want the deal to be upheld. But this is like, well, hold on, you just said you didn't have a deal. Now you do have a deal. So that's what we're saying, that may compromise their position, because if I'm the state, I'm like, well, here's, and she went on CNN and said it. She went on ABC. I have tons and tons of her saying this same thing, because she went and did like a press tour. So, I'm assuming the state attorney is going to say, look, now they can't sit there and argue that there was no deal. And then now all of a sudden, because it's beneficial, now argue they have a deal. Now, obviously, there's a difference between the factual arguments and the legal arguments, because as a matter of law, the court can still find, well, you had a deal as a matter of law, which I think would be the saving grace here. But I think it's hurt their case for them arguing that there was never a deal. And now they're saying there is.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Do you guys know how soon it's likely that we'll hear another iteration of this whole saga?
Well, now it's just up to the appellate court. He's out. He's going to be chilling. He's probably going to do some press. So he's probably I'm assuming he's going to be out.
I'm sure he's going to do some press.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the most certain thing.
How can he not do press? How's he not doing press right now?
Another sit-down interview.
Yeah.
Talking about how the world is unfair to Mr. Jussie Smollett.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh man.
We videotaped the rehearsal, man. I mean,
videotaped the rehearsal.
What more do I need? He videotaped the rehearsal.
I know.
That's a lot of evidence.
I know.
But this is a matter of law, though. This is not about the facts. This is about the law. If they had that agreement, legally it's over.
You know, everyone has their blind spots when it comes to being unable to put aside biases, and this one might be mine. I try to be fair. I'm not sure this one I can be. Yeah.
With that being the contract, Nate, the lawyer, for an implied contract, doesn't it have to be that a reasonable person has to believe it? And if they're saying that they didn't believe it was an agreement, that can be held against him, right?
Yes. I think it can. But in this case, when you read the statutes, it's very specific. To be able to prosecute someone and remove their rights on behalf of the state, you have to be authorized by state statute to do that specifically. Yeah. And the only persons authorized by state statute to do it is the state's attorney. Now, if the state's attorney recuses themselves, then a judge can order a special prosecutor, like he did in Jussie Smollett case, to take up, and that person would have all that authority. So it's just like, I use the analogy, it's just like anyone, right, going into a courtroom in a suit and tie. I might even be an attorney and go stand in a prosecutor's well and say, I'm representing the state, and then dismiss every single case that comes up. Mm-hmm. And later on, they'll, somebody come and say, what authority did you have to do that? And I said, well, I'm just some guys, and everybody, even though everybody believed that I was a state prosecutor at that time, it'll come down, did I actually have authority? Was I hired? Did the state prosecutor delegate that authority to me? And if I have no statutory authority to make those deals, then the court says those deals are void ab initio, right? They're void on their face. So it's not like you even have to go to court to void those deals.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, let me get some super chats here. Anti-Commie says, I thought Jussie was released pending appellate determination, which we know how fixed that is. Roll. something propaganda ads for her. Oh, I think Kamala maybe propaganda ads for her candidacy for 20. Yes, that is the case. He's out pending appellate determination. And he didn't actually have to put up any bail money for it, which is crazy.
Yeah, he just has to pay if he misses a court date, I think he's got to pay $150,000 or something like that. But Jussie's got that, so
of course he does. Yeah, I mean, well, he already has I mean, he already has to pay that, not in fees, but what's the
$120K for the restitution.
120K. You're right. Okay. And Fantasy I Die says, Kurt, I need you to yell, "This is Bitcoin country," in your best Nate voice. JK. Thank you, Alita, and the rest of the invoice for making my workday go by. Of course. Thank you so much for the super chat. Britt Cormier says, if you were doing a ton of community service in the past and were planning on doing it in the future, is that really a punishment? That seems sus. Sentencing you to do something you were doing anyway is not a sentence.
That's Kurt. You've been listening to Kurt, Brett. You've been listening to Kurt.
Kurt,
did you write this, Kurt? Did you write this, Kurt?
Kurt, for all of your TOS violations from getting hacked, I sentence you to more YouTube live streaming. Therefore, you will fulfill your sentence.
Yay.
How's that?
That's good.
Britt Cormier says, "Boss, you should not get involved with these grifters. They are the worst of the worst lawyers on the interwebs. Legal Eagle runs circles around any of them. Take that, Nate, for your 'I am a damn good lawyer' elevator." I know. We're terrible. We're the worst. We're awful at logical reasoning. C. Goody says, "Thanks for giving your approval, Kurt. She really needed it."
I don't know if that comment is sarcastic or not.
It is.
I tried to be
sarcastic.
I thought, I thought, there's someone new who's joining our group. You know what might be fun? What if I was like, nice and welcoming and tried to be engaging and tried to say, "Oh, she said family law. I don't know anything about that." A little self-deprecation, a little building her up.
Yeah.
I thought maybe these might be good social things to do, but what the hell do I know, apparently? Also, we're matching colors.
We are.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Goody is changing his name to C. Batty. I think that would be appropriate because he's always making jokes like that.
Boss Attorney Bri, none of that sounds interesting. I don't know why you're here.
That would not be very nice.
So anyhow, yeah, so that's Jussie Smollett. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on that before we turn to another subject.
I think we should bring back stockades.
Put him in the stocks.
Unusual.
Yes, I think we should bring him back in the stocks. Have him line the street from sun up to sundown. Throw a tomato at him. It'll make me feel a lot better.
I am going to say this though about this whole case. It's interesting watching them play the race card for Jussie in the way they're doing it, and it's sad because I was telling a friend of mine this the other day that I think it actually hurts the cause more than help, because you have a lot of people who are on that side are taking that to the next level, like, oh yeah, this is just because he's black, and I'm like, there's at some point, yes, you can make that argument, but I don't think anyone in their right mind can look what happened with Jussie. What happened altogether? He hired 2 black guys to frame 2 white guys, and everybody knows it's fake. Don't get me wrong, I understand there are discrepancies within the criminal justice system, but this is not one of those cases you stand by and with the Captain America shield and say, we're going to fight for freedom, right? Let Jussie go. Well, let's wait for a better case to come up, right? Jussie is not the case we're going to hang the cause on, right? So
sounds good. Okay, well, let's talk really quick about Bob Saget. It's kind of a little short subject. So the court ruled, I think just a few days ago, that in a permanent ruling that the photos and videos and records of his death are not going to be coming out to the public at all. And so a lot of people on social media have found that to be very suspicious, because it doesn't quite add up to a lot of people about the way that he died, because of the fractures on his skull that have been reported and the amount of force that would be required for, it just seems very suspect to a lot of people. But the family is the one that brought the lawsuit to try to keep all of that private. And I guess it was a very easy determination, because already under Florida law, it's it would be protected anyway under the Dale Earnhardt Jr. Family Protection Act, which was enacted after he famously died in a car accident or during a race, right? And so people were the public was, news agencies or whatever, were trying to get access to information to try to figure out whether or not the seatbelt was actually faulty or if there was something else that happened. And so the family, tried to protect that information. But I don't know if you guys have any extra thoughts on that.
It's a struggle because it sounds a little bit privileged to me, right? Most people, when you die, that's the first they have it all out. Just imagine all the people who died from COVID. They died from COVID, right before the body's even taken off the street, right? He's a COVID death.
Yeah.
And I would have loved, if it happened to me, I would love the privilege to say, yeah, don't tell anybody how I died. Just let them think I just went to heaven or whatever, right? So it's one of those things, but I do understand the family may not want that stuff out there, but it's just generally, I don't think there should be these two separate rules based on how much you can pay for attorneys to go and file these things in court. If they can tell us this person died from X, Y, and Z, this person died from this, then Bob Saget shouldn't get any special privilege. But again, that's just my libertarian view. So
I mean, I think that in this case, this is we do know how he died, though, right? It was it was a fall. It was trauma to the head. So it's kind of similar to saying somebody died from COVID. He died from falling, and suffering, whatever injuries that came from that. But I think that there's a little bit more of a morbid curiosity that people have when you have somebody that is a public figure. And that's why in LA County, I've visited the coroner's office there, and they are the coroner, I should say. And in their ginormous Costco warehouse looking refrigerator where they keep the corpses, they have a special place dedicated to Hollywood, well, not necessarily Hollywood, but usually celebrities, public figures that are closed off because they specifically had issues in the past of paparazzi trying to get in there to take photos. So it's
that feels more like an indictment against the paparazzi than anything else. It's like, man, geez, is there any line? Apparently not.
Well, but at the same time, you could also look at it and we also can think about it, in the context of Britney Spears and other people that have had issues with paparazzi in the past, that, they also, to a certain extent, wouldn't be doing what they're doing if there wasn't a market for those photos and for that information too, right? So, it is also an indictment on the paparazzi, but it's also kind of an indictment on people and maybe human nature in general, that there is that curiosity, that there are people that would pay money for that kind of information for whatever reasons, whether it's nefarious.
I would assume, without knowing, that trespassing in the coroner's office has got to be some sort of criminal violation. So prosecute the paparazzi for the trespass, and if it's not criminal, let's make it criminal. It's like, put them in jail for taking the photos. That'd be fun.
But you can also find ways to take a tour and whatnot. There are ways to do that. They do that, and you could go in and kind of it's not that big of a facility, I will say. So you could walk over and just say, oh, this is interesting, and then secretly snap a photo or something. That's also possible. Technically, you wouldn't be trespassing. So I don't know. Bri, do you have any thoughts on that? I know it's kind of a morbid subject.
Yeah, it does look suspicious in the fact that they brought out some information, but now they're closing it off, which might make it seem like it was something that wasn't an accident. So I think that's probably why a lot of the public have a little bit of an issue with it. But as far as protecting the family and the making sure they can grieve in private, I do think it's appropriate. But when it's a public figure, people are nosy, so they're gonna want to know.
Yeah, for sure. Let me get a couple more super chats. 2012 Jameson says, I am looking for Kurt's take on cuties. Well, that's been a while.
Yeah, I wanted to get into the issue and see if I could get copies of the indictment or grand jury indictments on the obscenity issues. Yeah. I think there might be a plausible case to be made for obscenity. It's a tough nut to crack, but I don't think it's necessarily frivolous. It's interesting to follow. So we'll see.
Interesting. I didn't realize, is this a recent thing that happened?
I want to say I know they indicted before, and I think they might have just re-indicted on some new charges recently because Tim Pool was covering it. So I think they might have come up with 4 new indictments on obscenity grounds for the movie. So basically, the short definition of obscenity is it appeals to the prurient interest, and it does not have sufficient literary, artistic, scientific, or other merit to justify and it's also based on community standards as opposed to national standards. There's Supreme Court case law that says that. So when you're viewing it, you have to view it within the nature of the community. So whatever provision part of Texas this is in, that you like, okay, there you might be able to make a plausible case. I know that they went to the federal court to try to seek an injunction against the state criminal indictment, which seems like a total non-starter under Ex parte Young, because you can't get an injunction from the federal court against a state court proceeding. So I'm not even sure how that's possible, but they are apparently trying. So, we'll press on.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll be curious to see if you find any more to analyze on that.
Yeah.
2012 Jameson also says Nate dies every time he sees Legal Eagle.
We all die a little inside, I think.
just a little. In Fantasy I Die says Saget got his Wi-Fi connection upgraded and immediately ascended from this mortal realm. Truly a heartbreaking story if you catch my drift. Oh, that's terrible. C. Goody says, kind of like Kurt is a somewhat public figure and people wondered if his lady friend had anything to do with getting hacked. He handled that very well. I don't know about a lady friend, but I don't know. Maybe there's more to the story than what I knew.
There was suggestion. Well, people were wondering how I got hacked, and one of the suggestions was that one of my moderators might have had sufficient permissions, and so maybe it was their account that was hacked rather than my account that was hacked. But no one had sufficient permissions at the time.
No.
And it seemed to be based on some sort of cookie exploit, browser cookie exploit. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but yeah, it seems unlikely that it was. It seems there's 2 kind of theories I'm working with. One is Streamlabs, who seems to have some problems and is adamant that they don't have problems, which instantly makes me suspicious. Or it's some sort of thing I downloaded somewhere, because I get these fake sponsorship offers. I assume some of you do too. They usually come from a .cx email address. It seems to be the Czech Republic for some reason. Or I saw one from .ua. So basically just filtering out anything that's not a .com is usually a pretty good place to start. But the idea is that I clicked on a link or downloaded a thing, which I'm not sure that I did, but I got nothing better. So yeah, I did really enjoy that call from Nate the lawyer, though. That was fun in my life. As I was coming back from my haircut and I'd gotten my first facial in years because I wanted to, start taking better care of my skin because I have to be on camera and be pretty. So, I was coming back from that and stopping off for lunch. Nate calls me and be like, hey, have you seen your channel lately? No. Now, normally when we have that conversation, the next thing that follows is some video of yours seems to be doing really well. It's blowing up. You're doing really well. This thing is just going crazy. People love it. And instead of it's like, they're streaming about the cryptocurrency. I'm like, and I think what I said was good. That's good news. I'll get back to it. I think I hung up on it.
Oh man. Wow.
It was not a fun 40 hours of my life.
No. But I'm glad that it ended
this,
relatively well.
This video is now being sponsored by by Bitdefender, antivirus, and Malwarebytes, who help protect you against your malware.
Based on the blockchain.
Yeah, based on the blockchain. Yeah. So.
No.
And I think I'm I'm a reasonably sophisticated person. My undergrad degree is computer science, which makes me feel even more embarrassed. It's like, that this happened somehow, and a 2-factor authentication, secure passwords with the password manager, don't reuse passwords, use a VPN, all the kind of basic stuff. And yeah, it seemed to not help. So the dark web got to me.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that someone somewhere is in violation of the Computer Fraud Abuse Act and also is committing wire fraud. I have reported this to the FBI for all the good it will do, but I let them know.
Oh man. Well,
I'm sure I'll hear right back.
Well, I'm glad that overall things kind of ironed out. I know things are still a little bit of a mess on your channel in terms of some of the videos that weren't uploaded and whatnot. But I'm glad nice you got it back.
Yeah, I mean there was another guy who covered this story recently, whose name temporarily escapes me, but covered my story and talked about how this happened to a lot of other creators. And he kind of goes through YouTube and he just searches for these like these usernames that were corrupt, and you just see a graveyard of users, who were compromised and didn't get their stuff back. And it's like, and some of the big channels apparently, like this happened to Jim Sterling to some degree. This has happened to people with like 3 million subs.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
So this is it's scary out there. So protect yourselves, I guess, and enjoy our sponsor NordVPN or something like that. Yeah, if you out there are a computer security company that would like to sponsor me in light of recent events, my email address is at the bottom of all my videos and is on my about page. So, and also please try to contact me from like a .com. That'd be good.
Yeah, generally speaking, that's usually gonna be better. Yeah. Well, let me get a couple more super chats, and then we'll get into, I think,
Upper Echelon Gamers. Yeah, that was the one. Thank you. Yeah, that was the name of the channel. Upper Echelon Gamers did a little video on it. Yeah, nothing he showed in his video seemed familiar to me. So it wasn't like I saw his video and I'm like, oh, I know what it is that I did. But he did a very good job of highlighting the issue, and it's probably something like what he's talking about, because that is the most. It's either that or Streamlabs. Pick your poison.
Man, oh man. Britt Cormier says those that have fame and money have one type of justice. See Jussie and Clinton, who committed perjury. If I did that to the same degree, I would pay a higher price. So Bob not having his records released is the same type of deal.
Fair point.
Yeah, that's probably true. Abe Eckstein says, are we going to talk about Josh Hawley's issues with KBJ for SCOTUS? Seems like she would have sympathy for Cutie's producers. I do not know about that issue. Do you guys?
No specific information. Nope. I mean, she has background as a criminal prosecutor, public defender, I believe, which is a bit unusual for a judicial nominee. You're more likely to see prosecutors than public defenders, but I mean, I suppose it's possible in her career as a public defender, she had to defend some people with reprehensible backgrounds and, did her job as she should. I don't know that necessarily means she has personal sympathy for it. She just, I never really liked that vector of attack from either the right or left when they're criticizing particularly people for things they did in their professional capacity. Yeah. Where you see this nominee and, you worked for such and such, and you took this position in court, and is that your position? And the answer is like, they always try to give the answer of, it doesn't reflect necessarily my personal position. I'm a lawyer trying to advocate. So are you taking back what you said? I'm like, what part of this are you not understanding? You're a lawyer, the person asking me this question. How are you not getting this? Yeah. So I never really liked that personal attack, that vector. Now, if you want to attack them for things they've said, scholarly or personally, then that's a whole different ball game. But I don't know that you can necessarily, even assuming that one time she defended someone who was accused of things that are comparable, I don't know that necessarily reflects a personal view. That seems unfair.
No, it doesn't. And most people know that, because essentially we have to advocate for clients, and those people, the worst murder or the worst heinous crime, that person gets a trial, and by the law, that person gets an attorney. Now, if people have an issue with that, then they just have an issue with our way of life, because that's ingrained in who we are. So
true, very true. STFU says the injuries were huge, but Bob's hotel apparently tracked door entries and no one entered after Bob, which is why they say it must have been accidental. I mean, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean,
I'm a trust but verify guy, so I trust you, but I can't verify it. So,
but that kind of information could be verified without the release of the photos and videos and medical records, right? Like that's something that could be verified elsewhere. So, so that would not be affected by this ruling by the judge in Florida. 2012 Jameson says, Kurt, at least NSA has your computer backed up. Rolf Peterson says, I mistook the Kurt hacked by lady friend as Cobain whacked by Courtney rumors and her having death photos sealed vis-a-vis public interest to know. Interesting. And Abe Eckstein says, check out his thread on Twitter. It was as a judge.
Okay, fair enough. That would be a more valid basis of criticism.
Yeah.
To the extent that she, as a judge, is not applying the law evenly in some way, then that would be a valid basis.
Yeah.
As a judge, you have to apply the law as it exists, not as you want it to be. And I've tried to make this point many times on my channel, and sometimes to the chagrin of my own user base, where I'm trying to. For example, in my Capitol Riot series, which led to some problems, like my 58-part series of let's discuss the January 6 attacks and discuss the FBI's case and DOJ case, right? So my side, my channel leans right. I lean right. And so some people were upset at me doing this. I'm like, but it's just the application of law. It's not hard. Here's the relevant laws, the no trespassing, no making these public parades inside the Capitol building and so forth and so on. Here's the FBI's evidence. The evidence looks pretty good. It feels like it applies to these charges. This seems to be a reasonable thing. And some people on my side of the aisle get mad at me for that analysis. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. If I'm gonna sit out here and I'm gonna condemn BLM or Antifa when they're doing the Summer of Love BS for the arson or the rioting or the whatever, I'm certainly not going to turn around and be a massive hypocrite when it's my side. I'm just going to go apply the law the same either way. It's like, that seems like a good thing to do. I don't know why this is so hard.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about Alec Baldwin, or should I say Alexander Baldwin III.
Well, I unfortunately, I got to move because I have to pick up my car, hopefully. So
all
I
right.
will see you good people later. Kurt,
thanks
continue
for
to drink
joining
that
us.
monster shake, whatever it is. And it was wonderful meeting you, boss Attorney Bri.
It was nice meeting you too.
Hopefully we'll do some more streams together. This is going to be awesome.
For sure.
You guys take care.
All right. See you, Nate.
Good day.
So, okay. So the saga continues in the Rust shooting case, because last Friday, Alec Baldwin filed a demand for arbitration, basically claiming to be indemnified for anything that he has to pay. He wants to be indemnified by the rest of the producers on set. Have you guys tracked this latest update at all, or no? Bri, have you been tracking the Rust shooting at all?
No, I haven't been tracking that case, actually. I stay more for trademarks and copyrights, but I have a little bit of an idea what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the basic facts are fairly simple, right? They were filming, they had guns on set. He was, preparing for a shoot, and pulled out his gun. And he shot somebody. He shot the cinematographer, and she died. The director too, but he survived. So now there's been all kinds of statements that Alec Baldwin has been making to the press, most of which, if not all of which, have been terrible for his case. And so most recently, it's been interesting to see these different sort of characters in this narrative, in this plot, sort of give their side of the story, their narrative in the story out to the press. I mean, he was the first one to get out there because it seemed like he just was itching to get his side out. He seems like it, at least my personal impression was that he seemed like he just couldn't stand the idea that people were criticizing him over, this incident, and that people were saying that he, potentially murdered someone. Right. And so, he had to sit down and interview with George Stephanopoulos. He talked to press on the side of the road, all kinds of stuff. And then you had the armorer who filed her lawsuit. That was her first time kind of getting her narrative out, which, when we talked about it on this channel before, I said that that's actually a much safer way to do it because, at the very least, you can say that wasn't exactly me. That was written by my lawyers. Like this is they can shift blame away from me because that's their responsibility, right? Like that's the job that they're supposed to do. And so as I found myself when I was reading the arbitration demand, Alec Baldwin kind of doing the same thing in this that he's done before, where he's sort of shifting blame. I mean, he literally says, I don't know who's responsible, but Alec Baldwin is not responsible.
Right.
like that's pretty much like that's the main gist of it. And he even, I mean, there's even, blame going around to everyone, even about, the Rust's filming not continuing after the shooting and all kinds of craziness. But
why didn't they show up to work the next day? Just because someone shot on set, that's no excuse. Let's get back to work. The show must go on, right?
Yeah.
Someone broke a leg, so let's move on. Where's the understudy?
Yeah. Right? Like where's the assistant cinematographer? Can't he or she stand in their role? So I found myself, and I try, I know that I have a little bit of a bias against Alec Baldwin because of things that I have, vignettes that I've heard over the years about his character, about his, things that he just seems like a pompous a-hole. Has always been my impression with, stories that have come out about him over the years. And so I don't want that to color the way that I see the claims in this case, but at the same time, I found myself as I was reading this, almost like not treating this filing as the same as, let's say, the armorer's filing, her complaint, her civil complaint. And it was because, whereas this arbitration demand was, it was technically not filed because it's not filed in court because it's submitted to JAMS, right? To JAMS arbitration. Yeah. And it's drafted by his attorneys. And so of course they're going to craft it in a way that is most protective of his liabilities and also going to, try to be as advantageous to him as possible. But I couldn't help but keep in mind all of the statements that he's made so far and be like, well, of course he's going to say that. Of course he's going to blame everybody else but himself. Like, and it's interesting to me the way that this case is playing out, kind of merging I talk about the court of public opinion and the court of law. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the various, statements that he's been making and stuff like that.
I saw something earlier, I think it was last week, and one of the things he was kind of harping on, and I might be confusing this with something else, but the fact that everyone's trying to sue the person with deep pockets. Was that Alec Baldwin? Yeah. So I guess I'm leaning more from law school, but of course you're going to sue the people with the money, especially if you're the person that kind of has some authority to make sure that things are happening right there. Same thing with the Travis Scott situation. Everyone's saying he shouldn't be liable because he's an artist, but at the same time, he also put on the show. So he has some type of responsibility there too. So you can't just say, oh, I shouldn't be sued just because I have a lot of money. It's like, of course we want to sue you. You have the money to pay for my injuries. And your insurance is probably not going to cover it. So I think that statement is a little bit almost just trying to be in the news, not like a real valid argument of why you shouldn't be sued. But yeah, I don't keep up with everything that Alec Baldwin does, but I saw that headline pop up a lot last week.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing too is that, like, something for people to keep in mind is that, the deep pockets idea is definitely true. Like, lawyers want to include as defendants people that have the funds to pay over to a plaintiff, because otherwise it's not worth it financially to file a lawsuit, because lawsuits are very expensive. Hiring a lawyer is expensive. As soon as you get into motion practice, you get into discovery, that stuff. And then if you actually go all the way to trial, I mean, you've got, to say tens of thousands of dollars is putting it mildly, especially when you've got some big firms that are involved. I mean, we are talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for these potential judgments. And so of course they want to be listing, naming people that have the funds for it. But at the same time, people also have to keep in mind that those defendants that have big pockets, if there is no, plausibility to their inclusion in that lawsuit as defendants, then they'll be dismissed, regardless of how much money they have. So they're, even though it's like the fact of them having deep pockets is not the only reason that they are being named in the lawsuit. It's because there is some potential measure of responsibility that they have there. And Alec Baldwin, being the guy that was holding the gun that killed the woman, is kind of at the center of it.
Right.
So, but one of the things that I found particularly interesting when I was reading through and I'm gonna share this too. Give me just 1 second, because StreamYard doesn't let me set this all up ahead of time, and it's always frustrating. Let's see if it actually shows up. Is it going to show up? It's giving me the pinwheel of death. Oh no. Okay, it's not letting me do it. Okay, well, I'll read it to you guys. Sorry. But oh gosh, let me find it here. He was talking about how he's one of the 6 producers. Now, this is something that hasn't really come up in a lot of the filings and stuff that have come out before this point. But he talks about how there are 6 credited producers: Ryan Smith, Nathan Klinger, Ryan Winterstern, Matt Del Piano, Anjul Nigam, and Baldwin. So Smith, individually and through his production company, Russ Movie Productions LLC, was primarily responsible for Russ' day-to-day operations. Smith and the other producers pitched Russ to investors, secured financing, and set the budget for the film. Smith and his associate Gabrielle Pickle hired the crew for Russ. So these are all points that are points of potential liability attributable to the producers as a whole, right? That the budgeting was an issue, that it was causing people to rush through and it was creating chaos, and that was making things unsafe. And the same thing with hiring, that they were hiring people and not paying them enough. So they were required, the armorer says that she was required to wear multiple hats. She was fulfilling too many roles to keep things actually safe, to be able to do her job well enough. And, people are saying that she wasn't even qualified to do the job of the armorer anyway. And so it's very interesting that he's saying that, these other people were all responsible for all of that stuff. Not me. I'm Alec Baldwin. I was only responsible for the creative stuff.
I'm Alec Baldwin.
I am Alec Baldwin. I was responsible for consulting on marketing and on artwork for the poster, and for preparation of video promotion at Cannes, and things like that. But like creative stuff, that was me. That was Alec Baldwin. But all of the logistical stuff, all of the financial stuff, like that was not Alec Baldwin. And then he also goes into the actual responsibilities of the gun itself. And he says, oh gosh, if I can find it here, he talks about how he basically admits in this filing, like, I didn't check the gun. I wasn't responsible for checking the gun. I didn't check the ammo, et cetera, et cetera. Like I received general gun training from the armorer, but because I've had so much experience, I did not need cross draw training. So I didn't do cross draw training.
Which way does that cut again? I had so much training, exactly.
Right.
Isn't this where it cut the other way?
Yeah, it can definitely cut the other way, because if you are somebody that has been on so many movie sets, and you say that you've been trained so many times, arguably you should know that certain requirements need to be fulfilled for gun safety.
Mhm.
Um, and then he even goes on to say in there that there's a policy that actors are not supposed to check the chamber on their own. They're not supposed to open the prop gun up and check it on their own. They're only allowed to do that if they really want to, in the presence of the armorer. So, if somebody really wants that peace of mind, they can do that, but they're not allowed to outside of their presence. But then that also kind of leads to the question of like, okay, but let's say you're in that situation. I mean, shouldn't it be that every actor needs that peace of mind if they are holding a gun in their hand?
Right.
And so shouldn't it be a requirement then that if they are holding a gun in their hand, the armorer has checked it in front of them? It's still like he still has that same policy problem, even though he says like, well, I didn't have responsibility, and so I didn't do any of these things.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And the part that he has so much training, it's like that's to hold you to a higher duty of care.
Yeah.
On top of, if you guys have guns, I think they should be checking the guns before they go out waving it around or whatever he was doing with the gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it should be, because it's like, at first when I was looking at this case, I was thinking like, well, okay, this is a film set. It's different from real life because you have certain people that have very specific responsibilities. And so you have the armorer that is in charge specifically over these weapons, and you also have the prop master that's in charge of all of the props. And so it makes sense that liability should probably be more heavily on the person whose area of expertise is exactly that, right? But then at the same time, I was like, yeah, but at the end of the day, this is still a weapon. This is still a deadly weapon. And so it just seems like, regardless of whether it's being used as a movie set or it's being used on a gun range, it still seems like, I mean, this is still something that has all of that lethal potential, if certain things line up. And in this case, certain things did line up. And so it just seems to me that regardless of whether this is a film set, the actor that is holding the gun in his or her hand still has responsibility for what happens to it when it's in their hand. And it just seems like he still is. I mean, and I don't expect him to change his tune anytime soon, but he's still not letting that go, apparently. Kurt, what are your thoughts? You're shaking your head.
No, I mean, nothing is surprising to me, either legally or on a personal level, that this is what's happening. The idea that he wants to avoid all responsibility is, of course, perfectly illogical. He seems to be a person who avoids that in his own life. I think that I'm still wondering what, if any, criminal result will occur. I don't know if they're still doing their investigation or not. I don't know if anyone's going to be charged criminally with any of this. It looks like not at this point, I guess. I think it looks like it's being quietly buried, which is a bit annoying. Either way, it's like I'd like to see some sort of actual analysis on sort of criminal liability from the people who have the authority to make those decisions.
Yeah.
I think without reading any agreements, it seems very likely that Alec Baldwin has a case. I would think, without reading anything, if you just ask me, like, what's probably true? Yeah, it's probably true that there's indemnity agreements. It's probably true it calls for arbitration. Those seems like things that are probably correct.
Yeah.
And so him saying, well, it's not me, and also this is not the correct forum, I'm like, okay, that sounds very plausible. So he might be right. It never struck me as particularly likely that he would have personal responsibility because of all the agreements that I'm sure were in place.
Yeah. And on that note, I can actually read. So from paragraph, I can read full stop. I can read to you guys a part of the arbitration agreement where he goes into that. So paragraph 38 of the arbitration demand, I think I said agreement demand. So he says, Finally, Section 9 of the producer agreement contains a broad indemnification clause providing that Rust Movie Productions, LLC, shall indemnify, defend, and hold harmless Eldorado Pictures, Inc. and Alec Baldwin from and against any loss, damage, liability, claim, demand, action, cost, and expense, including reasonable outside attorney's fees and costs arising from and or in connection with 1. Rust Movie Productions LLC's breach of any of its representations, warranties, and or covenants pursuant to this agreement. 2. Rust Movie Productions LLC's negligence and or willful misconduct. And or 3. The development, financing, production, marketing, distribution, and or exploitation of Rust and or any element thereof. But none of that seems to cover negligence or willful conduct by Alec Baldwin.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It said if Rust LLC was negligent, not if Baldwin was negligent.
Yeah. And to be clear, Eldorado Pictures is Alec Baldwin's production company. And Rust Movie Productions LLC is, I think, Smith's production company. So yeah. It doesn't seem to indemnify him if he is personally liable, which would make sense. That would make sense. I don't know that any indemnification agreement would be that broad, because I mean, you could just do whatever you want on set then and just not ever worry about being responsible.
I thought we were there, to be honest, though, the way Hollywood goes. It would almost surprise me if it weren't the case. To some degree, because Hollywood is good about all that crap.
It sounds like he's hoping that their negligence, the paragraph about their negligence, will also transfer to him. So like he thinks it goes both ways, but it sounds like it only goes one way.
Yeah. And there are two potential ways that Alec Baldwin is seeing liability here. So there's personally for, him being the one holding the gun, and then him as a producer. And as I mentioned before, he was saying all the decisions on hiring people, on setting the budget, on setting the day-to-day operations, that wasn't me. That was not Alec Baldwin. So that's your liability. That's not my liability. And it just seems like he's trying to carve out the agreement here that if they are liable, they have to pay for that on their own, and that he doesn't have to pay. It doesn't come out of his shares from the production pool, it seems like. I don't know. Do you guys have that impression too? That's just what I'm thinking.
So like he's trying to count himself as liable under the Rust LLC as the producer. Is that what you're saying?
I think that he's thinking in the event that the other people are held liable for, the budget, for the day-to-day operations and the hiring and all that kind of stuff, that he's kind of separating himself out from the rest of them. That if they are held, if any of them are held liable for those reasons, that he says, I had nothing to do with that. So therefore, whatever I contributed to this pool of money, because to clarify now, for any kind of like these agreements, somebody can be given producer credits just by providing some funds to help with with putting things together for the movie, and maybe you had absolutely nothing to do with the actual production beyond that. So and usually when you do that, when people pool funds together, it's just like starting up any kind of an enterprise. You share the potential profits, but you also share the potential liabilities. And so these kinds of terms divide things up in different ways. So he's probably, it seems like he's trying to sort of set things up so that he doesn't have to pay for somebody else's liability if that's what comes out.
Yeah, but it almost seems like they would, if they found personal liability on him for being the one holding the gun, and then also on the Rust LLC for being the producers or the people handling everything else in the movie, they could still be jointly and severably liable. So even if they are liable, he probably still has to pay his portion too.
Yeah. So then, and then his efforts to try to get indemnified, if it's been on the basis of individual liability, that shouldn't fly based on these terms from my reading.
And almost they can have him indemnify them Or did it say that? It said they have to indemnify him for their negligence. Okay, yeah.
Potentially, because that could be another portion of this agreement, right? I mean, this is he's quoting Section 9 of the producer agreement. We don't know what Section 8 or Section 10 say.
That is true.
So, it's of course, when you've got any kind of a demand or a complaint, it's always going to be drafted in a way that's most favorable to the person,
right?
Setting it up,
that
right?
for sure is true. And it's fine. It's notable to note what isn't there, right? So if anything was to be favorable, you'd expect it to be there. So if it's not there, probably doesn't provide that. So that kind of goes against my initial thoughts as well.
Yeah.
So that's a good note.
Yeah. So anyhow, I mean, this is just this case just is endlessly fascinating to me. And even though at this point, Kurt, like you said before, it's not surprising to me anymore, the things that he's saying and the things that he's doing, because it's just it seems like it's all baked in at this point, right? Alec Baldwin is Alec Baldwin. And he's going to do what is going to protect Alec Baldwin the most. But it still is, it's sad. And I hope that it doesn't get brushed under the rug, that the media just kind of goes quiet on this case.
Oh, I thought that's kind of already happened in large part, to be honest. The media's moved on, and if something happens someday, there might be a headline for 5 seconds. But
I mean, that's kind of what happened on Friday when
Halyna Hutchins is dead, buried, and forgotten at this point.
Yeah.
This is where we're at.
Well, her family's legal team has something else to say for that, though. With the statements that they made to the press and the whole videos that they came out reenacting the incident, and so I feel like there's going to be a lot of money flowing around in this litigation.
That for sure.
Yeah. 2012 Jameson says, well, good way to pierce the corporate veil. Yeah, I believe so. Anyhow, let's move on to Katy Perry. Do you guys know about the Ninth Circuit opinion that came down in that case, the Marcus Gray, aka Flame, versus Katy Perry over Dark Horse?
Yeah.
You guys familiar with that one?
Yeah, it's been a while since I covered it, but yeah, I was familiar with it when it was happening. Sure.
Yeah. So the Ninth Circuit just came out with their opinion, agreeing with the court's decision to vacate the jury verdict in that case. So for anybody that is not familiar, this was a case about two different songs, and it's a copyright case. So Bri, this is probably up your alley. You said that you do copyrights too, right? Not just
trademark and copyrights. Yep.
Nice. Okay. So they were comparing Dark Horse to Joyful Noise, and the ultimate conclusion by the jury was that there was a substantial similarity of an ostinato. So if you are not familiar with musical terms, an ostinato is basically a repeated riff that supports the melody. You can think of it as kind of like a chord progression. And generally speaking, now I think this is kind of controversial because of the blurred lines decision that came out. I know that's like a lot of people are still up in arms about that one. Generally speaking, something like a chord progression is too commonplace to be considered copyrightable or protectable under copyright laws. So here in this case, when this went up to the Ninth Circuit, the jury came back. They said, yes, they're substantially similar. Katy Perry, you have infringed the trademark of Marcus Gray. Then the judge said, actually, no, you haven't. I'm vacating the verdict. And then it went up to the Ninth Circuit. So I'll read just really quick the summary from the Ninth Circuit, and then we can kind of talk about it. The panel affirmed the district court's order vacating a jury's award of damages for copyright infringement and granting judgment as a matter of law to Catherine Hudson, also are professionally known as Katy Perry, and other defendants. Christian hip hop artist Marcus Gray, professionally known as Flame, Emmanuel Lambert, and Chike Ojukwu claimed that an ostinato, or repeating instrumental figure, in Hudson's song Dark Horse copied a similar ostinato in plaintiff's song Joyful Noise. The plaintiff held that copyright law protects musical works only to the extent that they are original works of authorship. The panel concluded that the ostinatos at issue here consisted entirely of commonplace musical elements, and the similarities between them did not arise out of an original combination of these elements. Consequently, the jury's verdict finding defendants liable for copyright infringement was unsupported by the evidence because plaintiffs failed to put forward legally sufficient evidence that Joyful Noise and Dark Horse were extrinsically similar works with respect to any musical features protectable under copyright law. That's the summary. So, sounds pretty good, right?
Sounds good to me, to be quite honest. It seems like the right decision. It's a nice little change for a nice circuit sometimes, because sometimes the Marvin Gaye one, whereas like in Robin Thicke, it's like so this is much more.
The Ninth Circuit was blurring some lines there, right?
Yes, they were. Very nice. Very good. So, bonus point to Legalbytes. Yes, but this is much more in line with the right law and more in line. And Adam Neely's done some great work on the musical analysis as well.
Yes.
I don't necessarily agree with him on the legal interpretations, but his musical interpretations are, way better, way smarter than mine. So we'll give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
But yeah, the to be able to have a copyright, you need to have, this original work of expression. And to my mind, there's something analogous or at least comparable in like the idea of dance moves as well, where when you talk about works of choreography, because this gets back to like the flossing dance and some other things that were a thing for a hot moment in copyright law. So you have these like little excerpts that by themselves are not really copyrightable. The composition is copyrightable, but these little elements by themselves are not. And so you can see that in other aspects of copyright law, where you're talking about scenes of fare, for example, in particular kinds of work. So if I'm going to make a fantasy work, if I'm going to make a high fantasy work, for example, it's going to have particular tropes, particular beats that are going to be very predictable, particular scenes that are very sort of familiar and reminiscent, to the point of being cliche or tropish, but they're to be expected. And so in music as well, like you have these elements of music, like, triads, or you have, different shifts of different chord progressions that are sort of well known in Western music that have been the last couple hundred years worth of development. So to take these individualized elements and see, well, I have this in common, and therefore this copyright infringement, I think is something the court should be more skeptical at. I think that this analysis is more on point. To say that there's some familiarity or some commonalities, even, I think that is not sufficient. You need to show a bit more than an overall familiarity. And I definitely don't think that admitting that someone was your inspiration should be the basis of a copyright infringement, because it just encourages people to be like, music, what's music? I've never heard of music. There are other artists. And I don't think that that's where we want to be either.
Yeah.
As a society.
Which is why I said this last week, because we were talking about the Dua Lipa lawsuit that she's got a couple of complaints filed against her, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought because I was pulling up an Adam Neely video. Sorry guys, that's really embarrassing. What were you just saying, Kurt?
We need a collab with Adam Neely. That's what we need.
Yes, I think so. He's got some really good breakdowns so that people can understand these musical terms and the ways in which music really does copy itself. Oh, and what I was going to say is that, Prince used to say that he didn't listen to anybody's music but his own. And he was eccentric enough that it's
That's
believable.
plausible.
Yeah,
It's
it's definitely. Yeah. But most people, like, if every single musician out there was like, no, I only listen to my work, like, that's just ridiculous. And even if you did, there's always a possibility that you could accidentally just from something from your childhood. You have some chord progression in your head from hearing something on the radio 20 years ago that could come up and could subconsciously enter a song that you're creating.
Yeah, or my working plan to sue all of Lawtube. This is just me framing all of Lawtube. You've all been exposed to me and my work. Boss Attorney Bri admitted how she watches my work and knows my work. So any similarities at all must be copyright infringement. Suing the copyright lawyer for the copyright infringement, always a fun way to meet friends and influence people. I'll tell you what, man.
Bri, so what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with the two songs, honestly, so I can't really make any determinations in my own opinion, but I do agree with the court as far as it being something so small that's being copied. And I'm seeing a lot of cases come up like that right now. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Drake and Chris Brown's No Guidance song. They're being sued by a man on YouTube that made a song called Like I Love Your Dress. And they're specifically focusing on words that is the "you got it, girl, you got it." That's what they say in the Chris Brown song. And then he says something about "you got it" and something about your dress, right? And then Chris Brown and Drake's attorney comes with all of these other songs that uses that same phrase, "you got it." And I think that's similar with the what's going on in the Katy Perry case, just based off of the summary that you read. It's like, it's something so small, but the rest of the song is like completely different. And when I listen to those two, the Chris Brown and Drake song against the YouTube guys song, they sound completely different to me, but maybe it's because I'm not a music genius or anything like that, but he really believes the song sounds exactly the same and those words are what's important. And I think that's what happened with Katy Perry. The little music part of it, they thought it sounds so similar and not necessarily under the court of law.
Yeah, and this is something that Adam Neely points out really well. I'm actually going to share my screen because I found
let's rip off the Adam Neely. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to play the whole thing, and I will
play part of it. I mean, it's fair use of commentary. We're doing some legal analysis on the back end of it. It's all good.
I will link to his video in the description so that people can go and check out the whole thing, because it is so worth checking out the whole thing. I mean, his videos are really great on this subject. Okay, let's see. I think this might be the right.
Also, on a personal level, I think Dark Horse is a banger of a song.
It's a great song.
It is a great song, and I think at least in my mind is capable of a deeper interpretation. I think maybe I'm overreading the song, but I actually think it's kind of a deep song.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've thought about the lyrics, but it's good. It's really good. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this one too. I'm not always a huge fan of Katy Perry, but I like this one. Anyhow, okay, let's see. I think this might be the right point where he kind of points out something very important about the commonality of this riff.
Or the same chord progression or bass line or drum groove, but they do share a similar synth ostinato, or a repeated melodic fragment that helps support the main melody. We only hear this ostinato in the verses for Dark Horse, but we hear it throughout A Joyful Noise. It's a descending phrase in staccato quarter notes that starts on the mediant in the key of A minor, the third degree of the scale, and descends down to the tonic. It sounds like this. Dark Horse's ostinato sounds suspiciously similar. It's in the key of B flat minor, but it's been transposed here to the key of A minor. Wait. I'm sorry about that. That's actually not the Katy Perry. That's the Adagio from Bach's Violin Sonata in F minor. This is Katy Perry's Dark Horse. Wait, sorry. Got confused again. That's the traditional Christmas carol, Jolly Old St. Nicholas. This is the Katy Perry. Actually, I'm sorry. I keep getting confused. That's the spiritual Go Down Moses. This is the Katy Perry. Wait a second. I'm so sorry. That's actually Akira Ikafube's theme to 1954's Godzilla.
Yeah.
This is actually Katy Perry's Dark Horse. So the question is this similar enough to Joyful Noise to legally be the same piece of music? The jury seems to have ruled that that is the case.
Juries are dumb. People are dumb. Juries suck.
So
this is one of
in the
the
video,
reasons that I cover mostly appellate cases, because facts, I don't like facts. Facts are dumb. Trial work is dumb. Trial attorneys are dumb because you have to deal with the facts and figure out what facts are. I don't like facts. Just tell me what the facts are. I'll tell you what the law is. Just spitting out some law truth over here, Court of Appeal style.
Whatever.
Juries
I
suck.
love juries. I love juries.
Mhm.
I even though it's a jury trial is scary because you never know exactly what they're thinking, and they can totally be thinking something different from what you're thinking.
Yeah,
But at the same
it's probably why the
time,
last time I went to a jury and I said, members of the jury, you're all a bunch of idiots, but that's okay. I'm your better, and I'm here to tell you the truth. And if you listen to me, we'll get through this together. Probably didn't work out that well for me.
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like juries because I like the psychological aspect of giving information to people, and hopefully they can retain it in the way that you are giving it. And I don't know, maybe that also comes with just being a YouTuber. Like, I hope that I'm the way that I'm conveying my information and my thoughts is is done so in a way that people find somewhat appealing or interesting or helpful. But anyhow, I appellate work would be interesting too, though. But I do like juries. But I think that this points to a really good note here, is that the ostinato really can't be relied on for something that is copyrightable, because it's so easy to make common, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, it's Adam Neely is great, and he does a great job of illustrating that. And in this particular video, he also goes into how basically the jury ended up relying almost entirely, or maybe exclusively, on the plaintiff's expert witness. And he basically had this whole theory about the ostinato, and he said that there's really nothing else out there that's similar to these two songs using it, and so of course it had to be substantially similar. But Adam Neely's like, well, I just gave a bunch of examples of things that have been all the way back to Bach, for crying out loud, where he's making music for the Catholic Church. Like, this has been around for a long time. So how can you possibly say that that's preposterous? So anyhow,
so I wonder if Katy Perry's attorneys didn't introduce those songs to show that it is, similar or it's common.
Yeah, I mean, he actually, you know what? I feel like Adam Neely would be a good expert witness at trial. That would be interesting if he started getting expert witness work, because I think, in this particular case, it looks like, Katy Perry's attorneys don't need to use, any kind of evidence or any kind of arguments, unless Marcus Gray decided to try to appeal it further. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they would be able to introduce the use of the similar kind of motif in other works, right? To show to the jury, like, no, this is what they're saying is Looney Tunes, and this is everywhere. So how could it possibly be copyrightable?
Right.
So yeah. So anyhow, well, I just thought that was fun, and adding in a little bit of copyrights and trademarks every once in a while is a good thing. Let me get a couple super chats. So Danny Conley, that's why mashups work so well. Look up Beat It Trooper mashup of Michael Jackson and Iron Maiden. Yeah, no, of course. Like, you could, Girl Talk was somebody that I listened to all throughout college. And the reason for that is because these songs, when you layer them on top of each other, they work so well, and exactly for that reason. And let me get a couple more here from before. Lawner Clip says, it is true, Rekieta Law went over Hawley's tweets during his night stream, and Robert Barnes said that map sympathy is a theme with many federal judges. Oof, talking about the SCOTUS nominee.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can't speak super intelligently to that. It seems somewhat unlikely, just because I mean, federal judges obviously are appointed by both parties. They all have to be Senate confirmed. It requires a lot of scholarship and time. And so I don't know what's going on in that, and I don't know, without reading her decisions, I don't know the merits of them. Maybe they're warranted. I don't know.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to comment on something like that without really knowing what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's like, if I'm gonna, I mean, I have no problem criticizing judges. I do it all the time. Sometimes those judges are the Supreme Court. I tell them they're full of shit. But I like to actually have some idea what I'm talking about before I go be like, hey, Supreme Court, why do you have your head up your ass?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
How'd you get this so wrong? Can you not read? You want me to explain it to you in really patronizing words? Because I'm capable of doing that.
2012 Jameson, I believe, talking about Alec Baldwin. His company as an alter ego. Oh boy, popcorn. 2012 Jameson also said Kurt is now channeling Law and Crime, talking about going after copyrights from other YouTubers.
It's all mine.
Yeah, boss attorney Bri. I don't know if you were following this this part of Lawtube, but Nick Rekieta got an interesting letter from the folks at Law and Crime after he famously live streamed the Rittenhouse trial. And they didn't like the fact that he was using their footage to comment on trials and whatnot and beating them at their own game. But hilariously, they decided to bow out after they realized, oh shoot, we actually don't have a copyright claim here.
Right. And I saw his video. I just haven't watched it yet to see what they actually bowed out, if they said anything.
Yeah. From what I saw, it looks like they very, very quietly just sort of backed into the bushes again. That's the impression that I got. So anyhow, well, Bri, it was so great having you here. I'm very excited to have you as part of our Lawtube group. So I'm happy to have you back again if you would like to. And everybody that is new to Bri, be sure to check out her channel. She's linked in the description below, along with Uncivil Law and along with Nate the Lawyer. And if you're not subscribed to Uncivil Law and Nate the Lawyer by now, what are you doing wrong with your life? And the same with Bri. Go and check her out. You've got a lot of good stuff on intellectual property law and corporate stuff, right?
Yes. So I do educational videos, and I recently started the live streaming. So mine may not be as smooth as yours is, but I'm working on it.
I'm still not smooth.
No, I'll tell you the same thing, Bri, that I've told people when if you go see my early stuff, it sucked. My channel was created 2017. I didn't start really producing stuff in a serious way until 2.5 years ago, whatever at this point. For the first, whatever that is, 1.5, 2 years, I was producing content and I hated all of it. And I wasn't producing it that often. So I think, at least for me, there was no way except to, get about and do it. So if you're not liking your work, I'll just remind you what Jordan Peterson would say: don't compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Yeah. As long as you're better than you were yesterday, you're doing fine. Yeah. So I think, if it's something you're interested in and something you're pursuing, then just continue. It might take a while to find your voice. It might take a while to find your style. This all, of course, assumes that I've found my voice and or style, which I'm not sure is true. I'm not sure that this is necessarily a completed process for me. So even these years later, give it a shot, man. And we'll be here to support you. As long as you don't support the legal eagle, you'll be fine.
And I don't want to give you words of encouragement.
Good. Excellent. You're off to a promising start.
Yes. I like the style better, but yes, definitely. Thank you for having me on. I'll be super open to having more live streams with you guys. Like I said, I watch you guys when I'm supposed to be working, but it's fun to participate too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that about does it for us. Indy's telling me that she needs to go outside, so this is probably perfect timing. I think just a couple more super chats that I missed at the very end. C Goody says, "Flock of legals, Lawtus, Lafia, not Lawtube." I don't know, man. It seems like you're trying to make fetch happen.
We tried to have you guys were there for a lot of it. We tried to spitball names. We tried to find something that gained consensus. We couldn't find anything that gains consensus, and I'm not sure anyone necessarily really agreed to Lawtube. It just became a thing, and we've all kind of decided to go with it. So Lawtube, that's where we're at now. So
I think so. I think so. Yeah, why not?
And we make fun of Law Twitter. That's
Of
also one of the
course.
things we do. It's Lawtube versus Law Twitter, sharks and jet style. So we're going to learn a choreography. We're going to learn a dance. It's going to be great.
Of course. A lot of snapping.
Snapping.
All right. And Cherokee Girl says, hi, Indy. And Indy is saying hi right back to you. So with that, I think that we will probably sign off. But Bri, hang out for just a second and we'll maybe chat backstage for a minute if you have time.
Yes,
And otherwise, cool. All right. And with that, we will say goodbye.